Well, so today we are talking about how can context really change your brain and the potential of interactive audio. So with me today we have Charlie Cadbury, who's from Say It Now. We have Charlie Brookes as well, Charlie and Charlie. And we have Shazia Ginai. And Tillian, little wave. So look, we've only got 20 minutes, so let's crack on. What are actionable ads?
Shall I hop in?
Hop in.
Hop in. Hi. So look, I'm Charlie Cadbury. I'm the CEO of Say It Now. Now, we're an ad tech business. We work exclusively in the world of audio. And we enable partners such as these, and many of you fine folk in the room, to deliver actionable ad campaigns. So imagine you're sat at home listening to the radio. The ads come on. One of the ads says, tonight's pizza night. I would like to give you 50% off your pizza nights. To get your discount, just say, open Pizza Hut deals to your pizza. You say, Alexa, open Pizza Hut deals. She says, can I send that coupon to your phone? You say, yes. It arrives on your phone, and you carry on listening to your radio. At the same time, our dashboard fills up with data about this campaign, shows the advertiser exactly what's going on, how many people have listened to their ads, how many people have engaged, how many coupons have been delivered. So we can deliver to any audio campaign that's running today, can be an actionable audio campaign tomorrow, very easily with the software that we built.
Now, I had a chance to actually read the white paper that you did, and Shazia, obviously, a lot of that research was there. It always fascinates me, the brain. What's the effect that it can have on advertising?
Great question. So we've only got 20 minutes. This is one of those hour-long conversations. But in short, basically, our brains, don't take this the wrong way, but they don't really care that much about brands. What they care about is stories. And so advertising is effectively telling your brain a story. And we build our life around us and our context within which we exist from the stories that we take in, right from when we're toddlers, and that's how we understand race, gender, and cultural context around us. And advertising is effectively doing the same thing. And at Neuro-Insight, what we do is we measure the subconscious brain response while people are basically hanging out and interacting with whatever you chuck in front of them. And one of the things that we measure is what goes into your long-term memory. And long-term memory has been proven to correlate directly with future action, decision-making, and behavior change. And so advertising plays a role in influencing human action, decision-making, behavior, and how we walk around and work in the world. And particularly on the subconscious side, I think a lot of advertising, we measure, conscious recall. But about 80 to 90% of our decisions happen in our brains. And so we've all probably sat in research where a consumer said, I'm not affected by advertising. But they don't really realize just how much of an impact it has at an emotional sort of level, at the memory level, and also in terms of just capturing attention, which is obviously a hot topic and probably something, again, we could talk about for hours.
Charlie C., the other Charlie, how do you think, how do they interact then with advertisers?
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say about telling stories. I guess Octave is a business that's brought news and Bauer's IP imagery together and then put data over it. So it's all about targeting people. If you're trying to tell a story, being able to know who you're talking to and have creative ways in telling that story really helps bring it along. So I guess for an advertiser's perspective, you've suddenly got new ways of talking. Alex was talking about the funnel earlier and where you operate in that funnel. It's quite an interesting opportunity, isn't it, to have these actionable ads where you can start thinking about what you want people to do and get them to take actions and move up or down the funnel. So I think it just opens up new opportunities to use audio in clever and exciting ways.
Tilly, let's get you in on here. So with these interactive audio ads, like how can we really utilize it? What are we doing? What are we doing at Group M?
Well, we're working with Say It Now, and we work with Octave as well. But I think the approach to this question really is kind of to remember that consumers are already fully embracing smart speakers and using them. We know that basically across all age groups, 50% of the UK own smart speakers. Even when you go up to 55 plus, 45% of them have smart speakers. So we're really talking about how do brands actually talk to this huge kind of changing consumer habits. And we also know that 2 out of 5 of those smart speaker owners are already using their smart speakers to make a range of purchase decisions. So it's about brands being really intentional about how they get into a place that is already existing and how they can actually add value to what, you know, the consumer kind of journey and what consumers are doing. If I kind of give the example of a campaign we've run at Xaxis to kind of show the range of kind of opportunities for brands out there, you might think, oh, it's connected to their Alexa, maybe it's a small, quick purchase people don't have to think about too much through Amazon. But we've run a campaign for a cruise company, and you might think, oh, well, that doesn't fit maybe with the perception that it's a big kind of consideration period, but actually with working with Say It Now, creating a skill where people were able to get more information, but also they were able to request a callback. We got 196 callbacks from that campaign, which if you consider without this technology, working on a radio campaign, you wouldn't have been able to get that kind of incremental, trackable, traceable result.
Shazia, is anything you can add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things, well, there's a few things actually that you've said that are really interesting. So just the share of smart speaker usage. We did a study quite a while ago with Mindshare actually, where we looked at how the brain responded to smart speaker interaction and doing specifically voice-based searches versus text-based searches. And what we found is that voice-based searches, they require a hell of a lot less brain power. So they had low cognitive load is what we would call it. Now what that tells us is effectively we're moving into a space now where people want to use their brain less. I know that sounds weird, but they are using a lot less of that cognitive power to get stuff done. The reason for that is from an evolutionary point of view, we're wired to look for the easy way to be able to achieve something. And so it's actually working in our favor. Now, what we've also found then is, with the study that we've done with Say It Now, is that when you see the brain response to interactive ads versus just standard radio ads, we saw a 10% uplift in brain response. So what we're able to do then is make the whole process easy for them in terms of being able to converse with brands, but also we're making the process a lot more actionable, right? So you're getting a double whammy from using kind of this interactivity with these sorts of ads. I think that the other thing we found, which has been super interesting, is kind of some of the nuances around just how that activates. So, for example, we saw that if you have this interactive nature with these ads, if you have a VO on top in the ad, that does one thing, but if you have Alexa saying the brand's name itself to a person, you get an 18% uplift in brain response. But if the person themselves is interacting with Alexa and says the brand name, you get a 30% uplift. And this is really heavily supported by some work we did on influencer marketing as well. We're seeing that nowadays the consumer is heavily participating in conversations with brands anyway. We all know that through all of the digital platforms that we're on. But this is giving them an opportunity to really be part of the conversation, and that is ultimately kind of really heavily affecting the success of any brand that uses this medium.
Charlie, how do we become part of the conversation then? Just picking up on Shazia's point.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting, the earlier presentation talking about the role that these audio brands play in people's lives. If you suddenly think now that you can interact with it, it offers all sorts of creativity, and we've only scratched the surface with, I think did you look at 6 different campaigns?
Yeah.
But there are almost infinite ways in which you could think about how you interact, from long form stuff, callbacks, right through to putting things into a basket. Suddenly it opens up that chance for the human being to have that one-on-one interaction on a brand they were already leaning into. For me, if I was a creative in the audience, I'd be quite excited about what that opens up the opportunity to do. And we've really only been doing this for the last 18 months, 2 years. So I think it will start to gather momentum. Companies like Charlie's are starting to build the speed at which they can turn the skills round and the things that they can do. I think it's really limitless and exciting time.
Contextual. Everyone wants to talk about contextual. How do you think contextual advertising can really target people and target the right audience?
Either of us can answer that. Is that me again?
Go on, Charlie, you're on a roll, mate. Go on.
Not that the little man tries to dominate the conversation or anything like that. I think context is really important. Obviously, I would do at Octave. We've taken all that data and spent a lot of time trying to make sure we understand who's listening and maybe what they're doing. So if 85% of the population owns a car, that's great. But we know that they're probably researching a car because they've been on Parker's website. That context turns a car owner into a potential car buyer, a massive, massive moment. If you can then take an actionable ad that maybe wants them to send them a brochure or potentially get a test drive, you're linking all that up. So having that knowledge of what the person is, who they are, maybe some of the things about them and that data, and then linking it to a moment and an action, it's really exciting opportunity to put the two
Just
together.
to build on that, I was just talking to Shazia earlier, like you were saying that your ears are the only organ in your body you can't turn off. So the whole idea of kind of contextual, if you can find the right audience and inspire them at the right moment, this whole idea that audio is pervasive, you're going to capture that person at the right moment.
Yeah.
And if you capture them with the right person at the right moment, they can then engage. It's very different to kind of swiping and clicking. If you fire up your vocal cords, you're actually kind of participating in the real world. You're moving air around, and then you're having this conversation, which fires up these different parts of your brain. You remember that message better. And so this whole idea of the idea of this wonderful context, but then this whole actionable element that you can then participate is incredibly powerful.
I've got to get my Xaxis colleague, Tilly. Tilly, what work? I mean, tell us about contextual.
Yeah, so I think probably two things to say from kind of my perspective on the contextual element. The changes that we've seen around privacy and that specifically how that affects digital audio, things like GDPR, Apple's app tracking, transparency policies, the kind of demise of the third-party cookie mean that contextual really is the most important way we have to kind of target audio campaigns at scale. At Xaxis, we work with our partners like Octave, and we kind of bring them together to develop kind of consistent contextual targeting. So it's an important thing to bear in mind in terms of the future of audio and how we're making sure that campaigns are relevant and targeted. And I think as well, we know that it performs well. At Xaxis, we've tested all sorts of contextual elements, and against the backdrop of the fact that on our audio campaigns, we see probably 95% plus listen-through rate. We saw like a 1.2% increase, which, if you think about that, it's a pretty sizable incremental gain in performance.
That's great.
I can add something to that, actually, from the brain's perspective. So we measure a part of the brain, which, the metric's called engagement, which is a really overused word in marketing. But what we mean is personal relevance. And we know from our data that if your brain sees something or hears something of relevance, it's more likely to put it into memory. That's a driver of what your brain wants to put into long-term memory. And we've done a ton of work around contextual. So we did the work with Radio Centre on Here and Now report, and it was a similar sort of thing. It's like understanding the importance of that kind of contextual piece is really critical for this sort of work. But going back to what you're saying around the ears in general, so just as a bit of background, that came from a conversation around the subject of attention, which is a hot topic right now. And at the moment, a lot of emphasis is being put on gaze as a measure of attention, and that completely misses audio, right? So we're talking about what the eyes see, and we're forgetting that humans have this other way of capturing attention. And the interesting thing with our ears being open is your eyes are on the front of your face, and so they are able to look forward, and you get periphery, and that's it. But your ears are on the side, and they can hear everything around you, up, down, all around. And when you're asleep, your ears are open. And from an evolutionary point of view, our ears are a vehicle for capturing attention. And so from a marketing point of view, we probably need to utilise that more.
Good. We've got a bit of time for some questions. So if you want to know about memory encoding and left and right side of the brain, Shazia is here. Do we have any questions from the audience? Very large audience.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Got one there.
Gentlemen, is there a roving reporter with a mic? Yeah.
Thank you. It's Jason from Colour Text. I'm just going back to Anne's charts before that showed that a lot of listening happens in car. And that reminds me that radio is usually a secondary experience to a primary activity like driving. Do you think that puts physical limits on the amount of kind of response, short-term ad response you can expect in an addressable kind of context relative to other media? And is that a strategic issue for this industry?
I can talk a little bit to that. So when we published the work with Radio Centre in the Here and Now report, we were looking at exactly that. If people are doing a task like peeling vegetables or on an exercise bike and the radio is kind of playing in the background, what impact does that have? And I guess the question is, you know, whether you choose to have radio ads, traditional radio ads, as a means of long-term brand building or short-term action. And I think that, you know, we live in a media ecosystem where we have the opportunity to select which media platforms are used for which marketing objective. And in that instance where somebody is driving, actually what you get is a lot of that stuff going into long-term memory, which will drive future actions and future purchase decisions. So it becomes a long-term brand building mechanism. And so I think there's less harm around that. I think utilizing that alongside something like interactive ads that are perhaps using the smart speaker skills is a great way of targeting them in a different environment using a different channel. So I think it's about what your media is for, what the objective is, and then how you can utilize the suite of stuff that sits in front of us and not just thinking of audio as being traditional radio on its own, because as you say, it does come with the limitations of when it's used and how it's used.
Could I add just quickly, obviously the interesting thing about IP is it's 3 different devices that do 3 different things. So we've talked today about actionable audio on a smart speaker, but when you're on mobile, I think that listening experience is slightly different to the one you're describing. So we spend quite a lot of time working on, does the device make a difference, and targeting that device as well. So it's a really good question and really valid, but there are 3 different devices involved.
And then looking at the future, you know, it's anticipated there'll be more voice-enabled devices than humans by 2024, because the next car you buy, the next microwave you buy, will be voice-enabled. And so this whole idea that you should expect to be able to reach your voice assistant wherever you are is only much on the rise, much as we've seen in the data we saw beforehand.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, there you go. Great. There you go.
Now we're in trouble.
I've always got questions. I'll try not to dominate, but if no one's going to ask one. So aimed probably primarily at Tilly and goes to what Gemma was saying earlier. So, yeah, what radio has always suffered from creativity problems, and Radio Centre's done great work over the years to try and address that. Yeah, digital makes radio look like a creative hotspot because it's disastrous, and the over frequency and the bad targeting has caused internet advertising to have a terrible reputation. So how can Xaxis help the creative community, and that includes people like Octave and Global and all of the media owners, in avoiding these problems?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I think there's lots of different ways that we can try and address the fact that there are limitations to digital radio digital advertising for audio, but we know it's an important question to answer because of the volumes of people more and more who are tuning in, and we've seen those stats today. I think things like this, where we're working with Say It Now to make that value add to digital campaigns, there are still things that we need to work on, but they're things that we can do to mitigate it. At Xaxis, we work really closely with 1 million ads, and for any campaign above 30K, you can have dynamic creative added for free. So we're working on kind of audio kind of native ways that work with the data that we can get for audio based around the previously mentioned GDPR concerns, all of those things to make that digital audio campaign as rich as possible and as targeted as possible, and ideally as kind of least annoying as possible, if that's the kind of thrust of your question. But it's an ongoing space where it's evolving, and all the time new solutions are coming up, but we don't have all the perfect answers. But what we can do is work to try and make the best, most contextually relevant ads, make them kind of actually relevant to you dynamically and try and make kind of things like Say It Now, working with Say It Now, adds an additional value to the consumer if they're able to book their cruise with their voice.
Yeah, I think you've given a good plug for the panel this afternoon as well, which is on dynamic creative. Charlie, have you got stuff to add on?
Yeah, I mean, all I thought I heard from you was that you were talking about digital broadcast, digital display advertising versus, and the fact that obviously audio can get rid of that ad fraud, etc. But I think you've answered all the points.
I think can we just do one more question now? One more question. We're out of time, but let's.
Okay, thank you. I'm Maria Cadbury. I'm digital and I'm a data junkie, and so we're talking about all this amazing data that you can get when you look at what Octave doing and what Xaxis is. But really, what does attribution or data look like if you think of smart speakers?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, obviously in audio, it's really hard to get a live view of exactly how your campaign's performing. So looking at these exactly when the ads fired, exactly when people have engaged, and then exactly what they're doing, which conversational paths they're taking. So you can not only optimize the ad creative if you're working with people like Million Ads, who are another great partner of ours, but you can also optimize the conversations to making sure you get the right conversions at the end. So it's proper kind of end-to-end, in-the-moment optimization that you can get, which is useful.
Yeah, and I guess at our end, we do as much qualitative work afterwards, whether it's big brand engagement and there's the pixel work you can do on websites to try and show that the ad is actually having the effect the marketeer or the agency wants. So we do that at Octave as well. I can see that's got.
Yeah, on that note,
I can see Demi leaning
off the stage. We just give a round of applause to our fantastic panel.